Shout out to Black Americans, dead ass. I know I've talked about this in the past, but I feel like I don't talk about it enough. And also, I feel like they don't get enough credit. I don't think black people all around the world understand that the United States is by far the safest country in the world today for black people to migrate to because of Black Americans.
You know, when I came to America newly, I used to think African Americans are lazy. They don't want to work and all that.
For centuries, they trained black people to see each other as strangers because they feared what will happen if Africa and her children ever looked each other together, unite, So they created a division between Black Americans and Africans.
I watched this video of this African lady raised in Kenya education system, and she was saying how, like, growing up in the school system, they were very confused about the little bit that they taught them about Black Americans and slavery. They were so confused. And she said that they keep us ignorant to each other's suffering, Black Americans and Africans. They keep us ignorant to each other's suffering to create division. So now here we have the Africans coming over to America, and America possibly about to open up to the Africans our money, the money that belongs to Black Americans. The ignorance that they keep both parties with not understanding the other people's suffering. This lady was saying how, even when she visited America, she did not understand us because she did not understand what our ancestors have endured, some of our ancestors. Now, with further education and knowledge of the American history, now she sees us. And I believe this goes on with any race, not just Africans versus Black Americans. I believe the reason we treat everyone the way we do is because we lack understanding. We lack understanding of each other. The Chinese lack understanding of the Africans. The Africans lack understanding of Black Americans. Black Americans lack understanding of islanders. Like, we all just lack understanding. We lack understanding due to our lack of proximity to one another. If we all were in more proximity to each other, if we all were closer with one another, where we shared stories, shared experiences, and brought people into our lives, we would have better understanding of each other. And we would see each other more on a human level than divided by our colors.
Kings and queens, welcome back to my YouTube commentary. Africans are finally acknowledging Black Americans and understanding their struggle. There's videos I'm going to play for you. Like the first video I played for you is an African from Nigeria. He is acknowledging what Black people have done for this world, because, to be realistic, Africans in diaspora are living well. Africans in diaspora, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, they are in USA courtesy of Black people. Okay? So the realization of Africans is not out of sympathy. Okay? Realization that what was done to Black Americans was done to all of us, was done to Africans too, through colonization. So we all went through the same hands. But the stories and myths and stereotypes that were put between us made us to be divided. Okay? Because when the transatlantic slave trade began, Europeans did not only steal bodies, they rewired or they reviewed identities. They erased the African memory from the captives and buried the diaspora from the consciousness of those left on the continent. Okay? They replaced connection with confusion. Now, Dr. John Henry Clark, a historian, founder of Pan-African Studies at Hunter College, once said this: to control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves, what they think about others. Okay? And they made us Africans think differently about us, because We were not confident about ourselves. I'm saying we were not because right now, Africans, black people are confident about themselves. Family, what happened? Africans were taught that black Americans were lost. Black Americans were told that Africans were primitive, okay? And two mirrors, both cracked by colonial propaganda, and now those mirrors are being repaired. And when we finally see each other clearly, the empire loses its grip. So what is happening? Africans are reconnecting with black Americans. Africans are understanding black Americans. Africans are asking forgiveness from black Americans for not understanding them. Let's watch these clips, then we come back and talk more.
You know, when I came to America newly, I used to think African Americans are lazy. They don't want to work and all that. You will never understand the struggle of African Americans until you live in the system for 5 years. Then you understand that being black in the system is already playing you 10-0. Like you are 10 steps behind. The schools in black neighborhoods, they're all underfunded. The only thing you can find anywhere, everywhere in black neighborhood is liquor store. Keep drinking and keep yourselves busy. Now I understand why everybody's fighting so much to live in white neighborhood. Before I used to say they are not proud of their skin color. They don't love who they are. But they're actually fighting for their children's future. Because being black in the system is already playing you 10-0. You are 10 steps behind. Is it you that is coming with underfunded certificates that want to be competing with somebody that is 10 steps ahead of you? Being black in the system is tough. You see, African Americans and Africans, we are all the same. Let us not be distracted. We are all the same. The only difference is that one is living in America, the other one is coming from Africa. Let's support each other's business. If you see your brother trying to make ends meet, support his business. You get to the point now. Peace and love.
Shout out to black Americans, dead ass. I know I've talked about this in the past, but I feel like I don't talk about it enough. And also, I feel like they don't get enough credit. I don't think black people all around the world understand that the United States is by far the safest country in the world today for black people to migrate to because of black Americans, because of their ancestors' sacrifice, including this birthright citizenship that everybody and their mama enjoys, that Donald Trump is trying to get rid of. This was enacted because of black Americans. And it breaks my heart the way a lot of people come to America and not only turn a blind eye to their plight, but also talk shit and shit on them, in spite of the fact that America is all they know and they're doing their best in a country that was not created for them, most especially Africans. But I'm not trying to get into the diaspora war thing because, like I've mentioned before, this is just a bunch of hurt people hurting people. You have to understand that one of the things that makes black Americans different from every other black people is black Americans are the only group of black people that actually got to live with white people. Everybody else was left behind in their home countries. I know the Caribbeans were also products of slavery. Those countries, including the Caribbean islands, are majority blacks. The countries that white people wanted to settle in, especially the United States, the black people who were forced to be there, they received a heavier dose of fuck shit. And naturally, black Americans got to witness what it is about humans that made the Bible say the heart of man is desperately wicked. They got to see that massa don't fuck with nobody but massa, Chad. And a lot of these Africans and Caribbeans who migrate to the U.S. are yet to learn this. That's why y'all be just, when you see a white people, we thank God. This is equivalent to a pick-me woman seeing a very sexy man who's tall, dark, and handsome and everything in her dream, that she just opens herself up to him to get knocked up. But then until she gets to his home to see how he lives, she gets to see that he lives like a pig. Dirty dishes, dirty laundry, snores and farts in his sleep, takes a shit and forgets to flush it, doesn't even wipe his ass right. Ooh, yeah. Bad breath in the morning, looking a hot mess. Then you come to see the things that makes him human. And then all of a sudden he ain't shit. But you could have figured that out before you let him knock you up if you were not so obsessed by his physical image. Girl, you should have asked baby mama number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You thought 11 was going to be the matching number? Yet, in spite of that, black Americans have been able to persevere and pull away and do their own thing in a country that was not created for them. They have their own art, some of which was taken from them, jazz, hip-hop, rap, their own dialect. And even at that, a lot of the things that they started were stolen from them without credit, destroyed, burned down, called ghetto, and anything but a child of God, child. And yet they still persevere. And to me, this is one of the things that makes them very attractive to me. Like I mentioned before, when I lived in America, Black Americans were my favorite group of people because their audacity, bro, their audacity is so fucking powerful. And I know that this is something that a lot of Black people, a lot of people in general, but especially Africans, judge them for. I want to see how y'all survive being the black sheep of a family that does not want you, that you're required to be a part of. We can all learn from each other because we're in this shit together. We are stronger together. Uche, peace and love.
Thank God for another day. Good morning, friends. How are you? I am so happy today because this is a purpose for me to see people being healed, to see people on the healing process. I'm not expecting people to be healed overnight. I'm not expecting people to forgive and forget overnight, but on the path to healing. And I'm so happy. I'm just grateful. You know, when I walk on the American soil, do you know what I'm thinking about now? I'm walking on blood. I'm walking on sweat. I'm walking on somebody's tears. I'm working on, when I walk, I'm walking on somebody's hope, somebody who had waited, somebody who had dreamed, the sweat of the ancestors. And it's just very humbling. You know, I am admiring their tenacity, their consistency in the midst of pain. And I'm just grateful. I have a new look as an African immigrant. I have a new look of things. And I promised, not a promise, but I told you guys I'm going to spread awareness. I'm going to start telling my fellow Africans that please don't use any derogatory words to describe the people we met in this land. Put some respect on it, regardless of where they are at. Because what they are, where they are at now, some of them, is because of generations upon generations upon generations of trauma. In fact, some of them are doing excellently well. Because some people would have been wiped out with what they passed through. They are still moving. They are still building America. They are still, you know, trying in spite of the odds, still paving the way for others who they don't even know. So that's part of the awareness I'm going to spread. I'm going to try to also visit the African American museums. I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to also try to do that when I go to Ghana or other African countries. I want to spread awareness. All right, guys, let me go. Bye-bye.
Black Americans do not have a home. That was what was said on my comment section on my previous video by my African brothers and sisters. Okay, come to think of it for a second. Why do we run from our so-called home and come to live in a homeless land? Why do we do that? Why are we Africans running from poverty, broken system, and war to live in a homeless land? Why are we doing that? While there was one who stayed, fought, built, and survived through 400 years of hell, Black Americans may not know their village or tribe, but let me tell you, these people stayed and built a rhythm, a culture, and an unbroken soul that is unmatched. These people turned pain into power, they turned shame into culture, they made a place that was feeling like nowhere into somewhere. Before you run into my comment section and say they don't have a home, ask yourself, what type of home are we Africans running from, and what type of home did Black Americans build? It's nothing.
I now feel for the Black community because I know what it feels like to be racially profiled. I didn't know it before, and I thought it was a little bit of a reach, but now I totally get it. That's what a man came out on here and said, and this is why we should believe victims. This is why we should believe people's stories. This is why we should have empathy, and this is why we should be able to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Because you thought it was a reach. That's what he said. He thought it was a reach when the Black community said that they were being racially profiled and they were getting stopped for no reason, and like it probably wasn't that serious. But now that Latinos are getting racially profiled, now he gets it. This is why empathy is so important, because you never know when the tables turn. And no, it shouldn't be transactional. It really shouldn't. You should believe people because you should think. You should be able to think outside yourself and be like, if that was me, I would hate that. I don't have to be Black to realize that that freaking sucks. That what they go through, what they've experienced, sounds painful, that I can't even imagine the years of frustration and honestly, just freaking frustration and anger that they must feel. But guess what? Now Latinos get it. Now. And that is why we are in the situation that we are, because people don't feel for others until it happens to them.
Do you know where a lot of Africans make their mistake when it comes to foundational Black Americans? They come to this country with arrogance, disrespect, talking down on foundational Black Americans about we don't have a culture, we don't know who we are, and all of that nonsense, trying to Africanize us, forcing us to claim Africa. That's the wrong way. And you see that you get a lot of resistance back from foundational Black Americans. I remember when Africans had a lot of support and a lot of foundational Black Americans respected Africans. But then something changed, man. It's not just one or two or three or a few people that's lashing out against Africans, mainly Nigerians. But it's like a great bulk or majority of foundational Black Americans that are against Africans. And there's a reason behind that. Now, if you look at the Asian community and the Middle Eastern community, they were able to come to this country and make a great deal amount of money off the Black community. They would come in, they would set up in the Black community, and they would make money. Black and Asians and Middle Easterns got along pretty well. But then the Africans came in, and Black Americans, very few Black Americans will support them, but they really didn't want to give Africans any type of business. As a matter of fact, there's some Africans here locally that tried to open a store or maybe even a mobile station, and they had to actually put Arabs or Middle Eastern people in there to run it for them because they weren't getting the support of foundational Black Americans. And there's a reason behind that. It's the disrespect that they showed towards the same people that they expect to support their businesses. Because if your people were supporting your business, there would be no need for you to come to America. You would do well from where you came from. But you travel all the way overseas just to disrespect the same people, the locals, the foundational people here, the ones you expect to give you business. You come here and disrespect and look down upon and feel that we need you, when in reality we don't. We've gone over 400 years, over 500 years without you. We've survived through just about everything. And here it is, you come here and just think that we ought to just bow down to you because you're from the continent of Africa, right? And that's wrong. That's the wrong way to approach things. If you had came here humble, we're not looking for anyone to kiss our behinds or, we're not looking for that. Just respect. Now, you don't see the Asians going through that. You don't see the Middle Easterns going. I could take you to a Middle Eastern business right now or an Asian business, and Black Americans are supporting them with no problem. They know them by name. Every now and then you may have a situation where you find one or two Black Americans get into it with an Asian or a Middle Eastern, but not too often. They were able to sit up in this community and do well. But the Africans come here, the Nigerians come here with a very haughty attitude, and Black Americans frown upon that. I remember when I went overseas, when we Americans went overseas, number one, they didn't allow us to get involved in their politics. You have Africans here that get involved in the politics here, and then like when that reparation topic come up, the Africans that are now in American political system, they quickly like, oh, I reject it. Black Americans should not get reparations. how are you going to come here and dictate what we get? And black Americans were the ones that voted you in the office in the name of blackness, thinking that they're supporting you and that you were going to support us, but instead you got in position now and look down your nose at black Americans and only support the people that come from where you came from and other immigrants. See, you can't do that, man. And see, that's the problem that a lot of Africans are having here in this country, is like they're very arrogant and disrespectful. When I went to other countries, man, it's like I went there with respect, humbled them. I'm very, very humble, respectful to the people. And then when it was time for me to leave, I left. See, I didn't go there trying to look down on the locals because I'm an American. I didn't do that. But yet, Nigerians and Africans come here and they do that in America. And I think that's one of the big reasons why a lot of y'all are being banned, especially with the Nigerian frauds. And y'all talk about doctors, you know, and engineers, but a lot of y'all are getting busted, man, for having fake license, right? You getting busted for scams and frauds. So that's the reason why I think a lot of Africans are getting kickbacks from foundational black Americans, because you come in here, you came wrong. You came with the wrong energy. And now you got a lot of black Americans now are starting to band together against you. You're going to have a few that's going to support you.
Welcome back. Now, for years, Africans on the continent watched Western media, representing black Americans in another type of manner, the myths, the stereotypes, like they are criminals, they are lazy, they are violent. Images were put on televisions, images were put on Hollywood movies. But the truth always finds a way to surface, because through music, through art, through digital age, the truth shouted louder than the lies. Because we saw the protest, we saw the resilience, we saw the culture, the excellence of black people, and we as Africans, we began the fight of Black America. Is the unfinished chapter of African liberation. Truth to be said, there's some Africans who are still behind. There's some Africans who still think otherwise, who still think black Americans as laws as not our own. And on the other hand, there's some black Americans who still think about Africa being primitive. But the fact is, or the truth is, more than 50%, more than 60% of Africans are now understanding, especially youths. More than 60% of black Americans are finally understanding Africans. Okay? Dr. PLO Lumumba, or Professor PLO Lumumba of Kenya, puts it in this way, that the tragedy of Africa is that those who want to change it are not in power, and those in power do not want to change it. Now, when I talk about that, I say that the same tragedy that Dr. Lumumba mentioned echoes in America too. Those who speak truth to power are silenced. Those benefiting from oppression, are silenced by those who are benefiting from oppression. Different soil, same struggle. So when Africans hear Professor Lumumba's words and compare them with the experience of Malcolm X, Dr. King, and today's activists, we realize one thing here, that this is one continuous fight against white supremacy dressed in global clothing. And for decades, some Africans say that why can't black Americans just move on? Because we were thinking that black Americans saying every day they are under racist, they are under oppression, they are under, under this and under that. We judged as Africans. Truth to be said, we judged without context. Forgetting that 400 years of psychological welfare does not dissolve in one generation. But as we watched someone like George Floyd breath stolen, as we listened to mothers cry for justice, as we watched something shifted in our collective heart, something shifted in our heart, and we felt it as Africans. The same pain we cry when we see African youths beaten and alive for demanding freedom from corrupt regime like from Tanzania, what did in Tanzania, it's the same pain that black people, black Americans are going through. Okay? Now, the social psychologist Dr. Joy Digray, author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, explained it clearly. He said this, and I quote, the injury of slavery did not end with emancipation. It was transmitted through a generation because the environment of oppression never truly disappeared. Okay? And that statement hit Africa like thunder because we too live in an environment of oppression. Okay? We too live in an environment where there is an economic colonization, where there is political manipulation, where there is cultural distortion. So when Africans study this Digray's work, they have begun, or we begin to see that trauma link us more than distance separate us. The trauma of black Americans and the trauma of Africans, they link each other. Okay? So understanding this replaces the judgment. Okay? Now, when we peel back the layers, we see the same blueprint of control written on two continents. Okay? In America, racism was the chain. In Africa, colonization was the cage. You know, both were designed by the same architects of domination. Okay? Dr. Amos Wilson said that you cannot understand the oppression of black people until you understand the psychology of the oppressor, because the oppressed often begin to think with the mind of those who enslaved them. Do you understand that? Okay? That truth explains why Africans once mocked the struggle of black Americans. We were looking through the eyes of the colonizer. We were looking through the eyes that trained to see our own people as inferior. And that is the mental chain that we are breaking right now. Okay? As Africans, we must wake up politically, we must wake up economically, and we are beginning to realize that our ignorance of black Americans' pain was a weapon used against both of us. Every time we dismissed their struggle, every time we strengthened the hand of white supremacy, okay? Every time they looked at Africa and saw chaos instead of potential, that the system smiled, you know? And that's why up to now, there's some countries are still behind knowing much about black Americans, because the people in that country still believe the same. They still believe that black Americans are like this and like that, you know? So right now, the system is not smiling anymore. The system is not smiling because the internet, the consciousness movement, and Pan-African thinkers are choosing to close the gap faster than the world expected. When black Americans stand in solidarity with the movements like End SARS in Nigeria, or when African echo like Black Lives Matter, that is not activism. That is history healing itself. On the other hand, knowledge is power. And power begins with truth. And for decades, Western academic distorted black history, portraying Africa as a continent without civilization until Europe arrived. But scholar like Dr. Anta Diop, the Senegalese historian and physician or psychiatrist, he shattered that myth. Okay? He said that the history of Africa will remain suspended in air and cannot be written correctly until African historians dare to connect it with the history of black America. Let that sink in. Okay? Until we connect African story with that of black Americans, neither side will ever have a full picture. And that's what is happening right now. A generation daring to connect the dots. Africans are revisiting history from Timbuktu to Mississippi, from Nubia to Harlem. And they are discovering that the same creative, the same spiritual and intellectual power runs through both peoples. And this understanding is building a new kind of respect, not out of sympathy or from outsider, but the recognition of equals. Okay? So today, African universities are inviting diaspora scholars to speak. Students in Nairobi are quoting Malcolm X. I am quoting Malcolm X. Youths in Ghana right now, they wear shirts printed with Frederick Douglass' face. In America, young black people wear African symbols with pride. Okay? Not as fashion, but as a declaration of belonging. You get that? Now, understanding Black America's struggle also means understanding its cost. Dr. Claudia Anderson, economist and author of Powernomics, explained it with a brutal clarity. He said that Black Americans were the only group in the nation that was systematically locked out of every economic opportunities, from land ownership to business development, and yet they are still expected to compete as if they started on equal ground. Okay? Africans right now are beginning to see how deep that injustice runs. Because we used to say that, but they are in America, the land of opportunity, because we were made to believe that whoever is in America must succeed. Okay? So when Black Americans were complaining, as Africans, we were like, God damn it, they are in America and they are complaining. It is true. They love to complain. The myths and stereotypes that white system put on the ground was to make us think that these Black Americans are not succeeding because they are lazy. But America is a land of opportunities, is a land of milk and honey. Okay? And when Africans realize this, now we are starting to see the brilliance of survival in every Black American success story. Every song, every invention, every protest, every university degrees, all are achieved under conditions designed to fail, you know, and that realization commands respect. Okay? And this is why many African youths now call Black Americans the strongest branch of the African trees, because no other branch, okay, no other branch faced with such storms and still produced food or fruit that fed the world. No other crowd has been discriminated and still produces the best fashion and best culture in the world. Okay? And as understanding grows, emotion shifted. Okay? Africa, who once criticized, are now emphasizing instead of saying that they complain too much. We are now saying, how did they survive this long? Because there's nobody, let me tell you for a fact, there's nobody in this generation, Asian American, Latin American, African, white people, there's nobody who can survive what Black Americans survived. Yeah, they will broke down. Okay? In Africa, we have colonization, we have corrupt leaders, but only that is making us down. So if we are being subjected on what was subjected to Black Americans, what could be the results? So no one can manage to sustain, or no one can manage to be alive, to still win spiritually, to still win economically, to still leading the culture, sports, music, under the pressure, under the oppression, under the man. Let me tell you, for example, slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, redlining, lynching. All this was done to Black Americans, but they still built America. They still managed to be the top in culture. They still managed to be the top in fashion. They still managed to be the top on everything. It's free to say, or allow me to say this, Black Americans are the blueprint of the world. Now, I want you to connect this. Some people are saying Black Americans are the true Israelites. I'll say the reality because in the Bible, if you're reading the Bible, even Jesus said, or God said, my children are scattered, you know. So Black Americans are the children who are scattered in different corners of and that's why when they return back to the motherland, there's some feeling they are feeling. Now, tell me, why did they tell us Africans to stay away from Black Americans? Why did they tell Africans, whenever you come here, stay, put your head down, don't mingle with them? Why? Because they knew once we mingle with them, the truth is gonna come out and we gonna be big. Okay? Dr. John Henry Clark reminded us again, saying that every black man and woman in America who has survived the horrors of enslavement, segregation, the systematic racism is a miracle in motion. And when Africans hear that, we realize that we were looking at living monuments of resistance, not victims. It is victorious, victors, not beggars, but builders of America, builders of everything. And to truly acknowledge our brothers and sisters across the Atlantic Ocean, Africa must first confront the colonial ghost that still whispers in our minds. Because we cannot understand Black American struggle while still believing in the myths of our colonizer they left behind. Those myths that told us that to be closer to Europe was a progress, and to be closer to African was a regression. That was myths. Listen to Dr. Amos. Okay? He said that the major function of education under white supremacy is to miseducate black people so they will willingly participate in their own oppression. And this is exactly what we did for generations. As Africans, we allowed colonial education to make us view Americans in different way. Okay? And by doing so, we judged our own family. In America, we judge them. We judge them through the same distorted lens. And now that awareness is spreading, we are dismantling those mental tapes. The tapes they put in our head that was keeping playing, the traps and everything, we are dismantling that. Across African campuses, young scholars are asking harder questions. Okay? They are comparing Jim Crow with the colonial policies. They are studying the color line and everything. And when you realize that no longer see your brother as foreigner, you see them as soldiers who were captured and forced to fight for another battlefield, you will understand it very well. Okay? Now, we have the role of culture and reconnection that is happening. And culture's role, culture like music, language, and spiritual have become the bridges where politics failed. Okay? So when Africans hear names Simon, when they hear about Tupac Shakur, about Kendrick Lamar, they hear the same rhythm of resistance found in our drums. And that's not coincidence. That is inheritance. Okay? As the Jamaican scholar Dr. Robert Hill, he was an historian of Pan-Africans, explained and said that the culture of resistance is the African diaspora. Okay? The culture of resistance in the African diaspora was the means by which Africa survived in exile. Okay? Think about that. Even when our ancestors were stripped of land, they carried Africa in their music, in their language, in their soul. And that culture kept Africa alive with our government, when our government was asleep. And today, that same culture is reviving us. African dance to hip hop, African are dancing to reggae and jazz, just not just because of the beats, but because the lyrics, the flow, the words that are inside that, it is more than anything else. And Black Americans right now are rediscovering African spirituality, from Yoruba traditions to Kemetic teachings, realizing that the roads that they were lost still run deep. Culture has done what politics could not do. It has reminded us that we are one people separated by geography and not destiny. But we are reclaiming our narrative. We are reclaiming the narrative. Okay? One of the most powerful shifts happening now, it is reclaiming a narrative. That's what we need to do. We have to write our own history. We have to write our own history. Come on, guys. We have to own our narrative. I have seen videos of Black Americans, some of them saying that Africans are not our brothers. I've seen Africans saying Black Americans are not our brothers. I have seen them saying, some Black American just coming on the camera and start saying that, why are we asking for reparation after all this long? We are so petty. Why are we crying about racism? Man, that's not how it's supposed to be. As an African, when I think of the 400 years of oppression of our African Americans, enslaved African Americans brothers, something runs deep in my heart. I feel pain. I feel tears flowing down my cheeks, because no one should be subjected on those. We are the maybe 4th, 5th, or 6th generation. Maybe we don't understand. But the results of slavery, the results of colonization, the results of lynching, the results of Jim Crow still runs up to now. That's why Black Americans are fighting hard to have a chance, to have an opportunity in America. We as Africans, we go there and we find things are just flowing and we are like, God damn it, these guys are crying. America is sweet. America is good. America could never be that sweet if it's not the fight of Black Americans. If it's not about the civil rights movements. If it's not about the voting rights, women rights, all these were fought by Black Americans. And for those Black people, for those Africans who are still acknowledging, who are making videos saying we are sorry. And I see on the comment section, I see people stitching and reacting, laughing, saying, why are we saying sorry? Life is spiritual, if you must know. Our ancestors lived for so long trying to prophesize about these days that we will reunite. You know, when you move from your home 20 years ago and maybe you lost, you cannot tell me that there's no day you have never think of returning to your home. Even your mother will not tell me, or your parents or your siblings will not tell me that they have stopped thinking about you. If you get a chance to go back home, you cannot start saying that those are not my siblings, that are not my parents. And as a parent and the siblings, they cannot deny you saying that you went for 20 years, so we don't recognize you. No. Blood still runs deep. You have the genes, the blood, the DNA of your ancestors. The Western world built its power by controlling our story. The story of Black people. They turned our glory into shame, into laughingstock. So everyone thinking of African, thinking of Black people, they think of something bad. Okay? But allow me to tell you this. We are rewriting our story and we are going to be big. Okay? So we are controlling our narrative again. When Black Americans talk about systematic racism, Africans now listen and say that is the same system that built our debt. Okay? That built our debt traps and manipulated our elections. When Africans talk about neocolonialism, Black Americans are now listening and say that is the same structure that built our prisons. That recognized, but that recognition is evolution. That's what we are doing. Allow me to end this video here. I have a lot to say. I have some, it's something emotional. I'm thinking of how I'm going to put this in a very good way to make you believe. To make you believe that we are uniting. I know a lot of people are not believing that we are uniting, but Things are changing and we need to change with it, okay? Tell me what you think on the comment section. Until next episode, peace out.